Okay, let's look at our last step of operation, which is clearing our peak readings. To clear our peak readings, once again, we're going to press the on-off enter button twice to give us our three optional drop-downs. Using the right arrow over the sensor will allow us then to drop down our sensor options. From there, we can use our down arrow until it brings up peaks. From there, we press the on-off enter button again. What it'll show on the instrument's display is our current peaks. Once again, what the peak readings will show is the highest concentration of combustible gas and toxics, along with our lowest oxygen reading since last time the peaks were cleared. Now, naturally, before I use the instrument, I want to clear these peaks to ensure any peak I see is my peak and not somebody else's. So at this point, we would just simply hit the clear button. By pressing the clear button, it'll then ask us once again, do we truly want to clear our peak readings? By pressing OK, we'll clear out our peak readings and will then automatically be at the real-time operation screen. But let's look at some alarm conditions. We're going to look at a low alarm first. Now, in a low alarm, you're going to hear a single beep with the flashing LEDs, and a vibrating alarm will also be activated in the instrument. But in a high alarm, it's going to be slightly different. We'll still get the vibrating alarm indication and the visual indication, but when the instrument goes into a high alarm, the audible tone will be different. Rather than being a single beep, you'll hear a dual tone. The dual tone is our indication, our audible indication of a high alarm condition. Should a sensor exceed the gas concentration higher than the measuring range of that particular sensor, what will be displayed on the instrument is OR. OR stands for overrange. In other words, the gas has come in contact with a gas concentration higher than it's capable of displaying, and therefore OR will appear on the display. Now, that OR will clear automatically for your toxic and your oxygen sensor once those gas concentrations drops down within the instrument's measuring range. But your combustible sensor is a little bit different. If the LEL sensor comes in contact with a gas concentration in excess of 100% LEL, it too will show OR. But not only will it show OR, but it'll lock that OR on a display, and at the same time your combustible sensor will power down. Your combustible sensor will turn itself off. The reason we want the combustible sensor to turn itself off in the presence of 100% LEL is purely to protect the combustible sensor from burning out. The combustible sensor detects combustible gas by burning the combustible gas, and the greater the concentration of combustible gas, the greater the burn. The greater the burn, the greater the heat, and that greater heat can actually cause stress to that catalytic bead and actually cause that bead to fracture. Older generation instruments that didn't have this feature built in would detect on a display 100, 150, 200% LEL until that little bead was cooking, until the bead would finally actually fracture. But what we've incorporated in the MX6 is something called LEL overrange protection, which means once I come in contact with 100% LEL, OR appears on the display, and the only way to clear that OR condition is to simply turn off the instrument and turn it back on again.